You need to stop letting her think she has a say in this house.
Don't worry, Mom. I already told you. She listens when I remind her who comes first. She knows her place.
The soup was still on fire when Mrs. Williams walked into Sonia's kitchen without knocking. Not a soft tap, not a polite hello, nothing. Just the sound of slippers slapping against cold tiles and a woman surveying someone else's kitchen like she owned every corner of it. Sonia froze. The wooden spoon in her hand dripped egusi onto the floor. "Is this how you cook for my son?" Mrs. Williams said, her voice slicing through the steam. "With that kind of fire, you want to burn his food? You want to kill him slowly?" Sonia was 3 months married. Barely 12 weeks into the life she had dreamed about. The quiet mornings, the matching cups, the warm weight of a husband sleeping beside her, and already something felt wrong. Not wrong the way you scream about, wrong the way you ignore, the way you tell yourself she's just protective, she's her mother, it will pass. It did not pass. She remembered their wedding day, the way Fred had held her hand at the altar, voice trembling as he said his vows. She had believed every word. She had stood in that white dress, heart completely open, thinking, this man chose me. This man will always stand by me. She did not yet know that Fred had never truly stood anywhere on his own. That evening, after Mrs. Williams left, Sonia turned to Fred. He was sitting at the dining table, scrolling his phone, completely unbothered. She stood in the kitchen doorway, still holding the spoon, waiting for him to say something. Anything. An apology, a small acknowledgement that what just happened was not normal. Fred looked up. "Don't take it to heart. That's just how she is. She means well." She means well. Sonia would hear those 3 words 40 more times before the year ended. It would become the wall Fred hid behind every single time his mother crossed a line. And the lines kept moving. Every week they shifted. Every week Mrs. Williams took one more step deeper into their home, their routines, their private corners, and Fred held the door open every single time. What they ate, Mrs. Williams decided. Where they spent their weekends, Mrs. Williams decided. How Sonia dressed when they visited family, Mrs. Williams had an opinion. At first, Sonia thought it was temporary, a phase, a mother struggling to let go of her only son. She told herself to be patient. She smiled through clenched teeth on Sunday lunches. She bit her tongue when Mrs. Williams rearranged her kitchen shelves during unannounced visits. She swallowed her humiliation like medicine, bitter, burning, but she told herself it was for the marriage. She was building something. She had to protect it. But she was the only one building, and a woman cannot hold up a house by herself forever. She gets tired, she gets quiet, and when she finally speaks, she does not whisper. The cracks were already there. She just wasn't ready to look at them yet. It started small, the way most dangerous things do. One evening, Sonia told Fred something private. She had been struggling emotionally. The loneliness of the marriage was beginning to settle on her chest like a stone. And so she opened up to her husband the way a wife is supposed to. She told him she felt invisible, that she felt like a stranger in her own home, that sometimes she cried in the bathroom because she didn't know how else to release it. Fred listened. He held her hand. He said, "I hear you." 2 days later, Mrs. Williams called Sonia on the phone. "I heard you've been feeling sorry for yourself," she said, her tone sharp and casual at the same time, the way someone speaks when they have already decided they're right. "Sonia, marriage is not a nursery school. Stop being dramatic and be a good wife to my son." Sonia stood in the middle of the living room, phone pressed to her ear, the blood draining slowly from her face. He told her. He actually told her. She hung up and sat down slowly on the couch, staring at the wall. The room felt different suddenly, smaller, like the walls had moved 2 inches closer while she wasn't looking. Like the home she had tried so hard to build had quietly become a place where she had no privacy, no protection, and no partner. She confronted Fred that night. "You told your mother what I shared with you in confidence?" Fred shifted. He didn't deny it. He didn't fully admit it either. He did what he always did. He softened it, wrapped it in words that made her feel like the problem. I was just asking for her advice. She's experienced. She knows about marriage. Fred, Sonia's voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. What I told you was private. It was between a husband and a wife. You took it to your mother. She's not just my mother, she's wise. She called me dramatic, Fred. She called me dramatic using words I gave you in tears. Silence. He looked away, and in that look, that sideways, uncomfortable, guilty look, Sonia saw the truth clearly for the first time. This was not going to stop. This was not a phase. This was who Fred was. A man so deeply tied to his mother that he could not hold a secret, could not make a decision, could not even comfort his own wife without running to report it first. From that night, Sonia became careful. She stopped sharing. She locked her inner world away and carried it alone. She stopped telling Fred when she was sad, when she was struggling, when something hurt, because she knew anything she said would travel directly to Mrs. Williams, and Mrs. Williams would use it like a weapon. The marriage became a performance. Sonia played the role of wife in a house where she had no real power. She cooked, she cleaned, she smiled at the right moments. She said yes ma when Mrs. Williams spoke, and I'll think about it when Fred brought his mother's instructions dressed as his own ideas. She performed the marriage every single day while quietly starving inside it. And the loneliness, the kind that is worse than being alone because you are alone beside someone, settled into her bones and stayed there. By the second year, there was a system, an actual functioning system that nobody had spoken out loud, but everyone followed. Sonia would cook. Mrs. Williams would tell Fred the food needed more seasoning. Fred would come to the table and say, "Babe, the soup is a little flat today." He would say it like it was his own observation, like he had not just spoken to his mother 20 minutes before dinner. Sonia knew. She always knew, but she said nothing. Mrs. Williams decided they needed a bigger apartment, one closer to her own house, naturally. She presented it to Fred as a good idea, a wise investment, a mother's love. Fred brought it to Sonia as if it were his own decision. My mother found a place, 3-bedroom, nice area. We should move. Fred, we just settled here. I like where we are. She already spoke to the landlord. Sonia stared at him. She already spoke to the landlord. Sonia, don't start. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking. Does your mother make our decisions now? Does she choose where we live? What's next, Fred? Does she decide when we have children? Does she choose that too? Fred's jaw tightened. You are being disrespectful. I'm being your wife. They moved into the apartment 3 streets from Mrs. Williams, and once they were closer, the visits became daily, sometimes twice daily. Mrs. Williams would arrive in the morning while Fred was getting ready for work, sit in their living room, eat their breakfast, and comment freely on everything: the curtains, the carpet, the way Sonia wore her hair, the way she greeted guests, the way she laughed too loudly for a married woman. Sonia began to notice something deeply disturbing. Fred did not make a single decision without first consulting his mother. Not one. He called her before accepting a work transfer. He called her before agreeing to attend his own friend's wedding because it was out of town. He called her before they bought a new television. A television. And each time Sonia tried to reach him, really reach him, the way a wife reaches for her husband, she found his mother already standing there between them, taking up all the space. One night, Sonia lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Fred slept soundly beside her. She thought about her own mother, who had raised her to be strong, who had told her that a good marriage was built by 2 people who faced the world together. She thought about what she had instead. I didn't marry a husband, she thought in the dark. I married a son, and his mother never gave him back. The worst part was not the control. The worst part was a discovery she made quietly, through small conversations with Fred's older relatives, whispers at family events, careful words from an aunt who had watched it all for years. This was not new. Fred had never made a decision without his mother, not as a teenager, not as a young man, not now. His mother had raised him not to need her less as he grew, but to need her more. She had built a son who could not stand without her shadow, and she had done it so slowly, so completely, that Fred himself did not see it. He called it love. He called it closeness. He called it family. What it actually was a cage, and Sonia had walked straight into it on her wedding day, dressed in white, smiling for photographs. She was not losing Fred to another woman. She was losing him to a woman who had never let him go in the first place. It was a family gathering. Mrs. Williams' birthday. Extended family, neighbors, church members, 30, maybe 40 people packed into the compound. The kind of gathering where everyone is watching, where everything means something, where what happens in public follows you home and lives there for years. Sonia had cooked for 2 days straight. She had not been asked to. She had decided on her own, quietly, without announcement, that she would show up fully. She would be the daughter-in-law nobody could criticize. She made jollof rice, fried chicken, moi moi, pepper soup, chin chin, and a birthday cake she ordered from a bakery 2 towns over. She had organized everything, arranged the tables, set the decorations. She had even ironed the tablecloths herself at midnight because she wanted everything to be right. She had done all of it, hoping, somewhere deep and still foolish inside her, that this would be the day Fred finally saw her. That he would look at everything she had done and feel something, pride, gratitude, love. That he would stand beside her at that party like a man who knew what he had. She was arranging plates when she heard Mrs. Williams' voice cut across the compound. "Who told Sonia to touch my kitchen? Did anyone ask her to cook? See this girl. She just does things without asking. No home training, none at all." The compound went quiet. Not completely quiet. Music was still playing somewhere, but the people nearby turned. Sonia felt their eyes before she saw them. She felt the heat crawl up her neck, felt her hands stop moving over the plates, felt her whole body go very, very still. The way prey goes still. The way a person goes still when they realize the place they thought was safe has just turned on them. She looked up. Mrs. Williams was speaking to one of her sisters, but looking directly at Sonia, performing for the crowd. They both knew it. "In my day," Mrs. Williams continued, loud enough for the entire row of seated aunties to hear, "a new wife would ask before she touched anything. But what can you do? Some people were just not raised properly." Not raised properly. The words landed on Sonia's skin like something hot. She set down the plate she was holding, carefully, slowly, deliberately, and she turned to look at Fred. He was standing 5 feet away. She could see in his face that he had heard every word. She looked at him with everything she had left. "Please," her eyes said, "please, just this once, say something. Stand here with me. Be my husband. I am begging you with my eyes in front of all these people. Please, just choose me." Fred looked at his mother. Then he looked at the ground. Then he walked away. He walked away. Something inside Sonia snapped. Not broke, because broken things crumble gradually. This was a snap. Clean, final. The sound a cord makes when it has been pulled too tight for too long and the tension becomes too much and something gives way completely. The sound of a woman arriving at the very last place she had told herself she would never reach. She straightened her back. She smoothed her blouse with both hands. She took one slow breath, and then she walked toward Mrs. Williams with steady, quiet feet. The compound noticed. People shifted in their chairs. Someone turned down the music without being asked. "Mama," Sonia said. Her voice was calm, the terrifying kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from decision. "I cooked because I wanted to honor you on your birthday. I cooked because I thought that was what a good daughter-in-law does. And you have just stood in front of your family, your guests, your grandchildren, and announced that I have no home training. Mrs. Williams drew herself up tall. I said what I said. I'm not finished. The compound held its breath. For 2 years, Sonia said, her voice carrying across every corner of that compound, I have been quiet. I have smiled when I wanted to cry. I have cooked food that got criticized. I have opened my home to a woman who treated it like property she owned. I have shared my most painful and private moments with my husband, and then found out, days later, that those moments were being discussed in another woman's sitting room like gossip over tea. She paused. She let that sit. I told my husband I was lonely. I told him I cried in bathrooms because I didn't know where else to put the pain. And 2 days later, his mother called me to say I was being dramatic. Her voice did not tremble. I have been talked over, talked about, corrected, controlled, and humiliated. And I said nothing because I believed that if I was patient enough, if I was good enough, if I was quiet enough, things would change. She turned to Fred now. He had moved back into the crowd when he felt the shift in the air. He was standing at the edge of it, his face tight, his jaw walking like he was chewing on words he couldn't decide whether to say. Fred. Just his name and the weight of 2 years inside it. I did not marry your mother. I married you. But in 2 years, I have never once felt like I was truly your wife, because every decision, every conversation, every private thing between us, it all passes through her first. You report to her, you consult her, you protect her feelings before you protect mine, and I let it go. Again and again, I let it go. Fred stepped forward. Sonia, this is not the place. You made it this place. You made it this place the moment you walked away instead of standing beside me. I needed you 5 minutes ago. I needed you to be a husband. And you looked at your mother, looked at the ground, and walked away in front of everyone who knows your name. An auntie in the back murmured something. Someone else hushed the children. The truth is, Fred, I have spent 2 years competing with your mother. And the most painful part? Sonia's voice broke. Just slightly, just enough to be human, not enough to stop her. I was never supposed to be competing with her. She is your mother. I was supposed to be your wife. Those 2 things were never meant to be in a fight. You were supposed to make sure of that. That was your job, and you never did it. She looked at Mrs. Williams one final time, not with hatred, with something sadder than hatred, with the look of a woman who finally understands the full picture and wishes she didn't. You raised a son who cannot stand without you. That is not strength, Mama. That is not love. That is a man who was never allowed to grow up, and I am done paying for it. Then she turned back to Fred and she said the words that would echo in that compound long after the party was over, long after the food was packed away, long after everyone drove home and lay in their own beds, staring at their own ceilings, thinking about what they had witnessed. I didn't marry a man. I married a mommy's boy. The silence was absolute. I am giving you a choice right now in front of everyone who loves you and everyone who is watching. Her voice was steady as stone. Be a husband or remain a son, but understand this clearly. You cannot be both, not in my marriage, not anymore. She waited. The whole compound waited. Fred opened his mouth. He looked at his mother, and that look, that instinctive, automatic, helpless look toward his mother's face, even in this moment, even now, said everything that needed to be said. Sonia saw it. Everyone saw it. She nodded, slowly. The way you nod when something you feared turns out to be true, and you have to make peace with knowing. The look of a woman putting down a load she had been carrying so long, her shoulders had forgotten what it felt like to be free. She picked up her bag from the table she had decorated, beside the cake she had ordered, at the party she had cooked 2 days to make beautiful. She walked through the compound with her head level and her steps even. People patted for her without being asked. Some of the older women looked at their laps. One of them reached out and touched Sonia's arm gently as she passed. Just a touch, just a brief press of fingers. The silent language of women who understood something for a long time but could never say it out loud. Sonia did not cry until she reached the gate. Hot tears ran freely the moment the noise of the compound faded behind her. Her hands were shaking. Her chest was a bruise. The grief of it, of choosing herself, of walking away from the life she had tried so hard to hold together, hit her all at once, standing there on the road outside with the evening air against her face. But she kept walking, because this was not the end of her. This was the first day she had breathed fully in 2 years. The first decision in her marriage that was entirely, completely, unquestionably hers. Behind her, inside the compound, the silence stretched on. Fred stood in the middle of the gathering. In the middle of the family, the guests, the aunties with their knowing eyes and their held tongues, and felt, perhaps for the very first time, the full weight of every small choice he had made, every time he had looked away, every time he had walked away, every time he had handed his wife's pain to his mother to manage and called it seeking wisdom, every time he had chosen comfortable over right. He had not lost Sonia today. He had been losing her for 2 years, one small betrayal at a time. Today was simply the day she stopped pretending she hadn't noticed. Mrs. Williams sat in her birthday chair. The cake sat in front of her, uncut. The jollof rice Sonia had cooked through the night sat in its pot, untouched. Around the compound, 40 people were looking at each other with the careful eyes of those who have just witnessed something they will not forget. Something true, something they recognized from their own homes, their own silences, their own moments of looking at a door and wondering if they should have walked through it sooner. Nobody was singing happy birthday anymore. For a long moment, nobody said anything at all. And in that silence, something Mrs. Williams had built over decades, the control, the power, the unspoken rule that her word was final and her presence was welcome anywhere and her son belonged first and always to her, began quietly to crack. Not because Sonia had shouted, but because Sonia had told the truth, calmly, clearly, in front of everyone. And the truth, once spoken in a quiet voice in a quiet compound, has a way of living in a room long after the person who spoke it has gone. She let the words settle. Then quietly, like something that had been waiting to be said for the longest time, I didn't marry a man. I married a mommy's boy. The compound was a held breath. Mrs. Williams' face was stone. Fred's face was something else entirely. Shame, and under the shame, recognition. The recognition of a man who has always known the truth about himself but has never been made to stand in front of it. Sonia picked up her bag from the table where she had set it hours ago when she arrived full of hope with her jollof rice and her birthday cake and her foolish, faithful hat. I'm giving you a choice, Fred, right now in front of everyone who loves you. Her voice did not shake. Be a husband or remain a son. But understand you cannot be both, not in my marriage. Silence. Fred opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his mother, looked at Sonia. And in that moment, in that one terrible, revealing moment of hesitation, Sonia got her answer. Not the answer she had prayed for, but the one she had been afraid was always true. She nodded slowly. The nod of a woman who finally understands. The nod of someone putting down a heavy thing she has been carrying too long. She walked out of that compound with her head straight, her steps even, and she did not look back. Not because she wasn't hurting. She was. Her chest felt like something had been torn from it. Her hands were trembling by the time she reached the gate. Hot tears ran down her face the moment the noise of the compound faded behind her. But she kept walking. Because this was not the end of her. This was the beginning of what came after surviving something that was slowly swallowing her alive. Behind her, inside the compound, the silence continued. Fred stood in the middle of it, in the middle of the family, the guests, the aunties with their knowing eyes, and realized, perhaps for the very first time in his adult life, what he had done. Not today, not just today. 2 years of small choices, 2 years of picking the safe thing over the right thing, 2 years of choosing his mother's comfort over his wife's dignity, 2 years of walking away when he should have stood still. He didn't lose Sonia because she spoke. He lost her because he never chose her. Mrs. Williams sat in her birthday chair. The cake Sonia had ordered was on the table in front of her. Around her, people were looking at each other the way people do when they have witnessed something true, something they recognized from their own lives, their own kitchens, their own silences. No one was celebrating anymore. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and drop a comment.